Hello. Today is Monday, November 24th. Welcome to episode 531 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Advisory Board member Lester Munson. I'm joined today by founder and executive director Jamil Jaffer, by the way, who has had a wonderful career of having 2 titles in every job, and senior fellows Morgan Vina and Jessica Jones. Folks, we are doing kind of part 2 of Friday's podcast about the amazing negotiations over the future of Ukraine. A lot of super duper positive developments over the weekend, the last 72 hours, have included conversations with the Ukrainians themselves, including President Zelensky, with European leaders, with American Republican senators who have weighed in with the administration. Our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has taken a direct role in the talks with Special Envoy Supremo Steve Witkoff. Notably, Keith Kellogg, who had been the Special Envoy for these talks, is now out of the picture. Also, there could be conversations going on in one of my favorite countries, Angola, in Africa, as the as the EU and the African Union do a summit there. European leaders may be involved in talks coming from Angola. So a lot of developments. There had been a deadline of Thanksgiving, that's in 3 days, for Ukraine to give an answer to this plan that was first surfaced with its 28 points last week. A deadline of Thanksgiving that may be extended. It appears that there's a tremendous softening of the U.S. position on what this deal will be. A lot of accusations that the original deal was perhaps written by the Russians themselves. The U.S. has shown the Trump administration has shown some flexibility here. Jamil, let's go to you first. I know you're hot and you want to roll in hard on this. Let's hear it.
Well, look, I mean, the plan was drafted by the Russians. We know that because Marco Rubio literally told a group of senators that, who then went on television at the Halifax Security Forum and said that. And then, of course, everybody in the administration, including Marco Rubio, spokesman Marco Rubio himself, the White House, all walked it back and said, no. It was a U.S. drafted plan with Russian ideas in it. But then, of course, some enterprising people on the internet decided to run the plan through ChatGPT and a variety of other LLMs, which demonstrated universally across all the LLMs, including, by the way, Grok, the favorite LLM of one Elon Musk, and every single LLM assessed that there was a 90+% chance that the document was drafted by a native Russian speaker in all forms because of all the various verbiage used and the like. And so I think we can all sort of count on the fact, notwithstanding Marco Rubio's statements and the White House statements, that this was in fact the Russian plan. And by the way, because all the elements of it demonstrate it's a Russian plan. We've now seen the EU's plan. I will admit that the one place I was off on this thing, and Morgan and you were right from our Friday podcast, is that this actually has caused the parties to come to the table and start negotiating to something that might get to a real solution. I will say the plan itself is a joke, right? It's amateur hour. It puts an artificial cap on Ukraine's military, requires them to give up land that the Russians don't even currently control. It's a terrible plan and would make President Trump look worse, and actually by having put it out there as a U.S. plan has made him look worse than even President Obama, who gave away Crimea. So hopefully he can walk this back. He's now said it's not his final offer, even though 24 hours earlier his team had told the Ukrainians it was our final offer. They needed to accept it by Thursday. But whatever, listen, things are moving. We're moving and grooving, and here we are. We're in a new state of affairs. But Morgan and a little bit you were right. It has moved the ball, and there are ongoing negotiations, maybe to bring this war to a close. Still amateur hour.
Wow. Folks, this is being recorded for eternity. Jamil just said I was right. Jones, we're living in the era of Donald Trump. It is the Trump administration. It is second term as American president. Things are slightly different under President Trump, and these rather interesting developments over the weekend are not something like if it were President Bush or President Obama, I think we'd think the wheels had fallen off of the administration, to be totally honest. But President Trump is the president, and things happen in a different way. And I'm being completely straightforward here with this question. Are we seeing progress, or is the process failing? What's your view?
So I'm actually surprised that the Trump administration was surprised at the backlash and pushback they got with the 28-point plan, right? It seemed like that this was their spectacular moment. They saw it as really an inflection point. We're going to have a Thanksgiving deadline. We're going to bring everyone to the table and we're going to get this deal done. And that just crumbled immediately after our podcast. Literally, truly, after we put this out, that crumbled over the weekend. You hear back and forth who said what. We're not really sure. You have Marco Rubio trying to save face. You've got everyone in Geneva trying, now all of a sudden it's not a proposal. There's a framework, and Thanksgiving's off the table. We want peace as soon as possible, which has always been what we've wanted. So Thanksgiving's done. And so I think they thought they had a much stronger bargaining hand than they did. And all these pieces you saw over the weekend with, Zelensky looking downtrodden and saying we have to choose between, our sovereignty and U.S. support. He was able to play that up in a way I think the Trump administration was surprised and got a lot more support, not just from the usual players, but I think just broader support with that messaging. And so I think, yes, it brought people to the table, but I don't think this is exactly the table and the cards they thought they were going to have in Geneva.
Morgan Vigna, are you thankful for the praise from our founder, Jamil Jaffer?
Well, I think I garner much more praise from Jamil than you do.
I note that is true. And are
Today,
the question
too.
Is, are you thankful?
So I'm not exactly shocked, but it's always appreciated.
All right. Now, please jump from there to your views of the developments over the last 72 hours.
So, Les, I actually would have liked to see this podcast recorded like a week from now. I think we are really in the thick of it. Diplomacy is messy. It's, while war is violent, ugly, bloody, blood treasure, and all of that, diplomacy is very frustrating. It takes time to marinate and to sort of negotiate between the both sides here. And so I think maybe Secretary Rubio might want to remind that to President Trump with his, Turkey Day deadline. And I think everyone, everyone in the negotiating room is a pretty sober mind that, the president wants to see this done. He wants to have a bow on it. Merry Christmas. But at the same time, though, I think expectations need to be set that this is gonna take some time to sort of go back and forth. It doesn't actually shock me less that President Trump went to the Russians for what are their terms? What do they want to see, right? And then went to the Europeans and went to the Ukrainians. That doesn't exactly shock me, because I think there is a sense that if you are, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but if you are looking to negotiate and hold both sides of equal weight, okay, what are the really hard points? What are the really sticking points? And then how can we find a way to come to the middle on this? Again, not necessarily the approach that I would take. I mean, I would rather see the United States ship all of the arms and weapons to Ukraine and see Ukraine blow up the Russians. I would be good with that. But at the same time, this is where we are. We are at the negotiating table here, and there are going to be some really tough concessions on the Ukrainian side. Whether the Russians will actually accept those and then agree to those and adhere to them, I think is a completely different story. So with that said, we are where we are. I would like to see where these negotiations are in about 2 weeks, if they even last that long, and then we can revisit and have this discussion again.
Morgan, what's amazing is we still have a show in 2 weeks, so we can revisit this and see what happens.
But what would if this were Hamas and Israel, and the president had gone to Hamas and taken Hamas's peace plan and put it out as the U.S. joint? We talked to everybody, the joint peace plan. We built the Hamas plan. Everyone would lose their minds, right? And so it is crazy.
I think it's an interesting intellectual question, Jamil. In the real world, Russia is not Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist group that we need to eliminate. Russia is not a country we can eliminate. It is a categorical error to assume that question would be actually pertinent to U.S. national security decision making.
Les, Russia is in the top 4 of American adversaries in the world, right? Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. They are opposed to every single piece of the American agenda. Vladimir Putin is not a friend. He lies daily. He invaded Ukraine not once but twice. He started this war. If anybody should have a cap on their military, it's Vladimir Putin, not Vladimir Zelensky.
All of the things you have said are true. None of them help you with the earlier argument that Russia is Hamas. These are it's a category.
They're
error.
A terrorist state that's a gas station.
On your part.
Terrorist state,
which is slightly different than your willingness to do time travel in the previous podcast. But so we do have a fault line. Nevertheless, I accept your praise earlier. Happily.
It was really
And indeed, this week of all weeks, I am thankful for it. And my brother and sisters here on this podcast, I am thankful for all of you. Your wisdom, I think, is terrific. This was a great discussion. My view is this was some progress we saw over the weekend. The Trump administration is unlike most others in the way it does things. The interests are the same. At the end of the day, if Trump can make it look like Russia is winning something out of this deal, he may get the peace deal he's looking for. I think that's the ground truth of the whole thing. And we will come back and revisit. Okay, that's a wrap. Thanks always to Kelly Crowley, Taylor Lane, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. We'll be taking a short break for the Thanksgiving holiday with no episodes this Wednesday or Friday. Happy Turkey Day to all of our listeners. We are thankful for you and for our viewers on YouTube, where we are on a regular basis. Please check us out there, rate, review, and subscribe. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. We'll see you next week.